It's been 5 years now. I've heard close-knit family members and friends telling my mum and lately me, move on, it's life. And I'm stuck every time, wondering how I'm supposed to move on from every hurtful moment that takes place in my life. I mean, it's called memory for a reason. And besides, all these moments of happiness, pain, joy, sorrow only exist because of the people who you love. Because when you choose to care for someone, you're choosing to let their opinions matter to you and are hence allowing them to leave an impression on you. Ever wondered why they say this? A man is judged by the company he keeps. The people who you choose to associate yourself with will eventually be the people responsible for creating changes within you that will in future define you as a strong or a weak person. So it really makes me think, how are you supposed to move on from them being a part of your life? Is there even such a thing as moving on? Because although no two people have the same lives, we each have one thing in common, this phrase, one fine day. Now, most of us are well acquainted with this phrase, but what we usually don't understand is that it's a substitute, a creative way to say that something has changed. This change may be positive or negative, but it's basically that one moment, one incident, one thought that changes the course of your life. But usually, when it's a loss, especially when someone leaves, how are you supposed to move on from that? Right now, if I ask you to revisit your one fine day, to let it all back in after dropping your defense, would you be able to look back at it and smile? If your answer is no, I'm going to help you change that into a yes. I'm no stranger to loss. I don't think anyone here is. A physical, mental, emotional, everyone has some scars. Granted, a few are more visible than others. Now, all of us pretend to be alright with this. See, there is a massive loophole in this lie. Have you ever noticed hardly any of us are shy to talk about the small negative changes that affect us, like spilling your coffee while you were rushing to work, or not having enough time for yourself because of your work. Or sometimes it can also be the most simplest of things, like losing a pen. All these things are the small negative changes, but we react to them anyways. So if you were truly fine about these actual problems that you face, why wouldn't you talk about them in the same way? After all, the emotion that we feel, which is pain, although the level on which we might feel is different, it's the same emotion. The reason is because all of us want to move on. We want to move forward. That's our hope talking. Our hope telling us that soon it'll be as though you're living the same day over and over again and you won't have to deal with it. Funny thing about that sentence, it's the only thing that's speaking. Without hope, we are, well, hopeless. My hopelessness began when I was 9. After summer vacations, my parents no longer danced like crazy or shared meals together. They would mostly avoid each other, and if they did meet, they would yell. Soon my dad had moved out, and not long after that did we move out ourselves. My mum started a paying guest accommodation, or a PG accommodation, to support us financially, and just like that, we had moved to the other side of the city. This side I'd only seen once before, when I was out for a late night drive with my parents, younger sister, and 2 best friends. Little did I know that day that that road would be the one which I'd now take going to school every single day. I could now change my perspective for what laid in life after school. Fast forwarding to a few weeks later, I found out that my mum and my dad would no longer be addressed to as a legal family. And that's when reality struck. So, naturally, like any 10-year-old who faces this situation and has no idea how to deal with it, I searched on Google how to move on. Based on the result that I got, knowing that, keeping in mind that I was 9 years old when I did this, I thought I was supposed to be all right with the fact that I would not have that perfect family moment, which all families have with such ease, and that I just have to live in the memory of everything that we had been through until I was 9. Sadly for me, that was not working out because one day in 6th standard, I was no longer able to keep that information to myself. You see, between 5th standard to 6th, after Diwali holidays, I had changed a lot. I learned that I needed to acknowledge and accept what has happened to the past if I ever wanted to move forward. But you see, when we usually talk about our problems, it might not always be a good thing. Because we can classify the people who talk about their problems in two different groups. The first group is the group that uses their problems as a constant motivation to do better, to strive for the impossible. But then there's also group 2. This group has a stable thought in their mind that what has happened is in the past, and since we can't change it, everyone should know why I'm not doing as well as others, and they don't bother to make an attempt to do better. Chances are most of the people who are hearing this could be in group 2, like how I was a few years back. I think most of us can relate to this. After facing any problem that affects us emotionally and showing up to work or college or school the next day, there is a mental aftermath battle that's going on. You can either remind yourself of what has happened, or you can continue working while reminding yourself of some motivational quote like, "Time and tide waits for no man." Personally, I feel that these battles are the hardest to fight because you know that even for a fraction of a second, if you let yourself think of the memory of what is disturbing you, you will not be able to maintain a smiling face. Think of it this way. Every time you're defending yourself, every time you focus on your work, every second that you avoid that thought, you are defending yourself from a mental punch that's being thrown at you. If this were a physical fight, you would come out without a scratch. Funny how they say a physical fight with a stronger opponent is much harder. Yet, even if for 1 second you let your guard down, you know that you will not be able to move forward. Most of us will look at this complete event in this one view. When it's a fight with yourself, you're never going to win. I say you turn this phrase around. When it's a fight with yourself, you are always going to win. The only difference is that you get to choose which side. So if coming back to when I googled up how to move on, the first thing it said was accept what has happened. Now, when they say this, it is basically realizing that what has happened is in the past and that you can't change it now, but still picking yourself up. Because right now, this moment, staying down is a choice that you're making. Realizing that you can move forward, that's the basic summary of acceptance. But I have a question for you. Why are we all struggling with what has happened in the past? Or to change it, why are we all struggling to accept something that we can't change? Because since we know it has already happened, Is it actually even worth the energy that we use to think about it? Because you know that you can't change it. Why not skip that step? Go ahead. Why are you still repeating that same thought and allowing it to pull you down? Because we humans have a tendency to enlarge all of our problems. So the problem that you think is big might actually just be small, but which you are desperately trying to avoid. Once you answer that question, the second which I asked myself for 2 years was, what really bothered me? After 2 years of questioning myself, after 2 years of studying where I felt the most hurt or upset, it was not being able to see my parents together and realizing that in some places I was just powerless, especially in situations where it is shifting 5 people through 3 different houses in less than 5 years. A 9-year-old can't do much but feel powerless. Here, after shifting through 2 houses, I already felt the two most dangerous things that you can feel when it comes to acceptance: self-pity and certainty. Although these might not sound that deep, they affect us much more than what we can actually realize. Self-pity is when you believe that no one truly understands your problem because it is only unique to you. Right? No one else has gone through what you have gone through. But the same emotion that we all feel is the same. Isn't it more than enough to have that one emotion that can connect us all? What more do we actually need? Second is certainty. Thinking as though my life couldn't possibly get better since I'm that deep, or it couldn't get that worse since, again, I'm that stuck up. But to quote Mark Manson, it is literally impossible for your life to not get better, as every second you're choosing. Every second you're choosing to stay down. Every second you are choosing to let that fact affect you. Throughout the past few years, I have realized that moving on is not at all what everyone thinks it is. Like I mentioned in the beginning, you can't really move on from the people who have given value to your values, priorities, and goals. Looking back, I've been through more than 5 different groups, and all of them altered my priorities, my values, and my goals a little. I've always moved with the change, with the ones I've cared about. Because although sometimes that feeling of loss, that void that it sometimes leaves in us can be so deep that words can't express it, that the time that it might take to even make breathing feel easier, it can't be expressed in words. But still picking yourself up, still realizing that that person's impression that's been left on you still exists, and even making the smallest of efforts to put that out forth to others can create a remarkable difference. Because whether we accept it or not, without the people who have brought about that change in our life, you wouldn't be who you are today. I wouldn't be who I am today. So the next time you look at your one fine day, I hope you try to move on with the change and not try to move away from it. Thank you.